Very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the fifth and final day of Audio Next Week, The Sounds of Tomorrow. The last 4 days of Audio Next Week, an AFAX conference about India's growing audio market, we've covered the factors driving the audio boom on day 1, the future of radio on day 2, the rise of podcast on day 3, and local language content on day 4. The topic for today's discussion is business models. Will advertising continue to be the main revenue driver in the future? Moving on to the panel, we have Amin Lakhani, Chief Operating Officer, Mindshare South Asia, Arjun Ravi Kuladi, Head of Sales, India at Spotify, and Siddhartha Roy, Chief Operating Officer, Hungama Digital Media. Welcome everyone. Now introducing you to the moderator of the session, Shrikant Khandekar, co-founder and CEO at AFAX. Once again, thank you everyone for joining. Over to you, Mr. Khandekar.
Thank you, Devashish. Welcome everyone. So this panel is about, on the last day of Audionxt, the panel is about the ways of monetizing streaming audio. So I'm going to give a little perspective to begin with. I'm going to look at all the earlier media that have gone before this and tell you how much of the share roughly comes from advertising and how much comes from subscriptions or pay. So let's start with print. And this data, by the way, is for 2020, so it's broadly correct. It may give or take a few percentage points. So print, 64% of the revenue comes from advertising and 36% from subscriptions. In television, now this is interesting, actually pay, if you look at the way consumers paid, 63% of the revenue comes from pay, that is the subscription you paid for television, and 37% from advertising. However, see, this 63% is money that they pay to, very often say there are 100 million cable TV homes, so you paid it to the cable TV operator. A small percentage of that goes to the broadcasters. So finally, it may not be 60, advertising 37 and pays 63. Maybe it's advertising 60 and pays 40, but it's fairly balanced. Then if you come to radio is, I mean, it's entirely advertising and sponsorship based. So even when they do events and other things outside of radio, it's all paid for by the advertiser or by a sponsor. Then let's take web publishing. In web publishing, I'm being charitable when I say that 2% of the revenue comes from subscriptions. I think it may be actually 1%. It's virtually negligible. Now in the last year and a half, publishers are trying to get their readers to pay, but it's very early days here. So you could say advertising is 98% and subscription or pay revenue is 2%. If you look at video OTT, advertising is 64% and pay is 36%. Now, I'm going to just mention one thing about video OTT, which is that some 4.5 years ago, we had a conference, AFAX had done a conference for the first edition called Audionxt. It was a lot. It reminds me so much of the way Audionxt is today. It's the first day and there was a sense of, why are you doing this? There's hardly anything to discuss, okay? And that time, there was a panel around pay or advertising and nobody could see who is going to pay subscription money for video online because it was all very small. Reliance had just come in and smashed all barriers with low prices. So it could be that today we are sitting here and everything looks, streaming seems to be advertising driven, but it could change very rapidly. But I would like to hear from all of you where this might go. So this is the background. And now I'd invite each of you to, I'd invite each of the panelists to please give an overview as they see it on the issue of monetization for 2 minutes each. Amin, would you like to take this, please?
Yeah. So I think it's a very interesting topic that you bring in, Shrikant. And like you mentioned that, some of us would be asking in the industry as to why are we discussing subscription revenues versus advertising revenues on audio form of business. I'm of the believer that in India, especially, both models will need to coexist with each other, like the way we are seeing in some of the other parts of the world as well. One very interesting example that comes to my mind, I was just reading somewhere on social media a couple of days ago, that for a similar type of revenue between Netflix and YouTube ads, I mean, both of them are in the similar range of revenue, but YouTube's ARPU is $14, whereas Netflix ARPU is $140. So having said that, I think both the models can coexist. Also, the entire era of subscription or the sensitivity of subscription within this country is really catching up pace in the last 3-4 years. If you look at it, more and more people are becoming open to the fact that you need to subscribe to access quality content. And I think content cuts across formats. So whether it is video or whether it's audio tomorrow, I think slowly and steadily people are warming up to that entire piece, saying, can I have my genre of music or my genre of podcast or my genre of panels or or content that I like, and it's curated perfectly for me. And if I really want to have enjoy that type of content, I think I need to shell some amount of money. And I think there are some very interesting case studies. For example, the entire telecom industry has actually created a vast revenue model out of subscription. Siddharth is over here, and I'm keen to hear. He would have far many examples of how this is shaping up. And Arjun, who's on the other hand, building, and I'm sure he will have stats to tell us that how subscription, although it's a smaller percentage, but it's growing year on year. So I think we are right. Opportune time.
Right. Yes, it's very interesting. Arjun, would you like to take this?
Sure, thanks. And thanks for setting that up so nicely, Amin. So I think largely I agree with Amin. And I'll just give some background context. So globally, if you think about it, about approximately, these are not exact numbers, but 60% of our users are on the free tier and about 45% of our users are on the paid tier, right? But just like the example of Netflix that Amin mentioned, the 40% of our subscribers drive, maybe over 90% of our revenue, right? Whereas 60% of our users drive about 10-12% of our revenue.
Okay.
So we are obviously, from an overall revenue point of view, very, very subscription driven globally. That will of course vary from market to market, right? So we don't expect those percentages to be the same in India. They're much more skewed towards free here, while we don't talk about exact numbers. It's a predominantly free market, right? And I think there is a place for both, plus more, right? So I think my 2 points to this is, of course, ads and subscription will coexist. But my sense is that we are at day zero of audio monetization, really, right? It is only in 2020, between 2020 and 2021, that ad spend on streaming audio exceeded global ad spend on radio, right? So it is still global ad spend on streaming audio exceeded global ad spend on radio, right?
Okay.
So it is still early days. If you think back to, like you were mentioning, the early days of video, right? Who would have thought that people uploading some random UGC clips to YouTube is going to be like a multi-$100 billion business, right? So devices are exploding, access is exploding, use cases for consumption are exploding, ways to consume obviously are exploding. And while so far we have come with a point of view of, okay, it's going to be ads or subscription, I feel like there is a lot of innovation to be done on monetization anyway across many more models that could be, creator driven, it could be fan driven, it could be event driven. Like there are many other ways in which audio can be monetized, and that journey will play out over time.
Okay, thank you. Siddharth?
No, thanks, Srikanth. I think it's a very opportune conversation and topic, keeping in mind, as I believe that the phase one of the largest streaming ecosystem for music is more or less happened. We've got the global majors here. We've got a set of Indian incumbents out there. It's a vibrant, large consuming audience today. And each of our consumer bases continue to go a lot more deeper in terms of minutes and hours of consumption. And that is a reality. And that's something I believe that clock will not turn back. It's a given. Habits are changing. Habits have changed. And in the last 2 years, whatever we've seen on the back of even the COVID play out, Srikanth, has been a lot interesting, keeping in mind that we've had, 90% of music comes out of our movies. We're all aware of that. And the fact that movie creation, content creation from movies was hampered and challenged. That has opened the entire non-film space in a very, very big manner. Sure, podcasting as a category was there. There was a certain amount of hype and fad, but we knew that there was a certain niche set of audiences that consumed that category.
Right.
With the opening of the non-film space as well, there's been sizable amount of content growth out there, and we're seeing a lot more creation of habit. I'm in complete agreement where I believe that there cannot be an over dependence on one format or the other. When we look at Spotify for us, even what Arjun was speaking about, I mean, the data sets are there for the taking. The fact that 60% of users contribute 10% and 40 contribute 90%. That in India, I'm in complete agreement that we're in literally very, very early stages of the larger subscription layer. The fact that consumers are willing to pay is a given. Video has driven that change. We believe audio is seeing that change as well. India has a very different marketplace where the fact that if you can microcharge your audiences, the way you bring some of the microcharging playouts to the user, you could be giving them the service 1 day, 7 day, 2 weeks, 1 month, depending on how you want to package the product. That is being seen. There are some of us that are now collaborating with telecom networks to bundle in the ringback tone with the music service as well, and that's got its own set of audiences being created where there is actually revenue being attached for that service and feature being made available. Simultaneously, what we're seeing is that it's not only direct advertising, which is to say that there is a audio bucket out there, and that is the audio bucket that a music streaming service digs into. The fact that there are large brands who are looking at music as a core value in their businesses in terms of positioning, we're seeing a lot of brand collaborations happen. We're aware of, aware of the McDowell's #1 program that we had. It was a massive program. There's a big phygital play to it, where there was a lot of physical and a massive amount of digital distribution, which was led both by audio and video, because in India, we don't only listen to our music, we watch our music as well.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
So all of that, Shrikant, adds in a very, very interesting layer.
Okay.
So Indian innovations are going to be a lot different. We are spread across 7 key languages where music gets created, and that also opens a lot of interesting opportunities out there for build out there.
Okay, thank you. That's very good. Okay, so I'm going to ask you three things I want to ask actually. The first is that, which is a quick one, because I brought up this video OTT before. So in the case of video OTT, it was linear TV. When you looked at audiences, they were looking at linear TV. So it was a choice between linear TV, which was in a family situation, mostly 98% of sets, whatever, 95, 96% of the TV sets. And in the case of video OTT, it was more personal, and but it was basically linear TV with the context in which it was happening, right? In this case, do you see any similarities between radio and streaming? What are the similarities and differences of radio and streaming? So there are two questions. One is, what is the similarities and differences between the two, whether in terms of audiences, in all its aspects, whether in terms of audience, the situations in which they listen to it, the advertiser type. So there's one of that. All the comparison with radio. And the second part is that as you see, you're absolutely right. We are at day 0, but as this progresses, any of the three of you, will you see any similarity with the way video OTT played out, or two, are they such utterly different creatures that there really is no point of comparison? So please, now anybody can take it. If you like about.
I can take it. I think they're distinctly different.
Okay, but
and why do I say that? Is the core nature of content. No one gets up in the morning and says he wants to listen to music today.
Okay, cool.
Okay. We end up having consumers come to us, spend extensive amount of time, multiple number of sessions in a day, depending on the mood, Please understand, audio is a format where they could be multitasking and using that content.
Sure.
Okay, and that is reflective. We are distinctly different from terrestrial radio. That radio is all about building a sense of community around.
Sorry, Siddharth, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to ask, I mean, would you like to, or Arjun, would you like to do this? Because they have not actually come in yet, so hardly. You mind? Sorry, I'm so sorry. Amit or Arjun, would you like to? Can't hear you. Can't hear you, Arjun.
I mean, I think yours.
Your audio is off.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Okay, I think I completely agree with what Siddharth was mentioning, and to me, two things come into my mind when you raise a question like this. One is familiarity of the content. Now, I mean, you don't need to be familiar with audio content, because all of us, whichever generation that we belong to, in some form or the other, whether it was my parents, me, my children, have grown up to being accustomed to having access to audio as content in many different ways. It could be terrestrial radio, it could be FM radio, it could be Walkmans of the world, or your own led music system, and it could be different genres of music. It could be religious or mythological music to something which works for you, which is in shape, in form, in style right now. But so that settles for are people really accustomed to. So this is nothing different. There was a point in time where it would be different if you would watch video content on your mobile. But some people who are regular watchers of connected TV, and watching content on your TV, I don't think they can hardly make a difference whether it's cable bringing in that connection, or whether it's Wi-Fi bringing in that content, right? So to me, familiarity with content is very important, and I don't think that's a question at all. So that's one part. The second part is that how engaging or how likable is the content, and whoever brings it. So if the question is that there is a taste that I have, which is different from what Arjun has, which is different from what Siddharth has, which will be different from what you have, Shrikant. And therefore, to my taste, if a platform can help me curate and serve me content which is very like what I would want to enjoy, and then that gets me going. Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of the tech audio content system that we are talking about.
But is there a difference in the profile? Because Siddharth, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there are about 200 million. I think the EY report said there are about 200 million people who stream audio at least once a month, right? So the mass is very large, right? Like radio also is very large. So is there a difference in the profile of these people who are streaming? Or are they likely to be younger? Are they likely to be from a certain area, or is it pretty much the same thing? I mean, anybody could take this, please.
So we just did a Cantor study to understand streaming behavior versus the rest, right? And I think the data is interesting. We find that typically people on streaming versus radio are younger, more educated, and higher disposable income, right? Versus the people on radio.
No, but you're talking about your own platform.
No.
Generally
talking about across the board streaming. Specifically, I don't want to bring up Spotify specifically, but if you look at streaming behavior generally, definitely younger, and then depending on the cuts you take, more educated, higher income, right? So that's definitely a difference we see. I think the second thing, and again connecting it back to your previous question about similarities with video, I think there are similarities and differences. The similarities are that the conditions for what made video explode over the last few years are the exact conditions that are being replicated on audio now, right? So video went from being a fixed screen to screens everywhere, went from being broadcast to personalization.
But sorry to interrupt you, Arjun, but there, the thing is that when you stream video, the cost of streaming, it was very high. And until Reliance came along, basically, you couldn't afford it. You had to be...
and so now we have that, right? I mean,
yeah, but my point is that such a big element in the case of audio streaming cost?
No, I think it's not about cost, it's about behavior, right? So if you suddenly get access to 50 million tracks that you would probably have to pirate or download or torrent earlier, but you don't have to do any of that, and it's just on demand. It's personalized for you, like Amin said. Radio is the same for everyone. Spotify or Hangama or Ghana or a Savan will be different for every user because it's curated to them.
Please.
And the final point being ubiquity. If you're looking at video, you finally need a screen. But when you're driving, when you're cooking, when you're vacuuming the house, when you're going for a walk, those are not moments where screens are available, right? You're basically doing your own thing, but audio is around there. So behaviorally, of course, is a massive difference between radio and streaming.
So one of the questions I would ask is, maybe Siddharth, you could, is that if, for example, radio revenue shrank, radio pretty much halved, I think, between 2019 and 2020, right? It probably came down from about 3,000 crore, maybe 100 crore over, down to about 1,500 crore or 100 crore less. So let's say 3,000 to 1,500 crore within a year. Siddharth, did streaming gain from that in any way? I mean, that's one way of also looking at if there's a relationship between the two, right?
See, our base numbers were so small that each of us obviously had extensive amount of gain. Okay, but did we become the recipient of that 1,500 crore transfer in that sense? I do not believe so, because you need to understand each of our services are on growth phase. Each of us have different objectives and different values that we bring to growing our community.
You're talking about streaming in general, right?
No, I'm talking, when you're talking audio, and your comparative is radio to music streaming service, I am basically playing the same base card in that sense.
Right.
Okay. So so the way you need to look at our products and our services is where today when a consumer gets music, he has different mediums or different structures in which he ends up getting his music. Okay, we probably as a digital community, digital platform, we're able to personalize, we're able to recommend, we're able to bring them their localization in a specific market, in their towns, villages, spaces. The fact that Middle India is growing on music is a given. Yes, it is an asset light class, which means that for every piece of video consumer watches, we can put in tens of songs for the same size of content that moves on that bandwidth as such. I believe today, from a fearful consumption of content on data, it's now become fearless, and we've also gained from it. It's been driven by video, but music has also been a gainer of that change.
So, so my question actually is that when, so I want to ask something about YouTube, but I just hold that because YouTube is free and it's like the big boy out there. So what does that do to all the audio music players?
YouTube is not necessarily only free. There is YouTube Premium and YouTube Premium.
It is. But a lot of the songs are available for free on the main web. I mean, I want to ask you a question actually. It struck me. See, you have seen the rise of several. You've been in this space for about 20, 25 years. You've been there, I guess. So you have seen several media rise. Okay, you have talked to clients about new media, about new possibilities. You have seen their reaction. So whether it was the web, whether it was radio, whether it was video OTT, you would have had many conversations with clients in the early phase, right? Where they look at this is exciting. Even events, for example, events became very big in the last 10, 15 years. Right. So when clients see something new, so as an agency, I guess that one of your responsibilities for agencies is to minimize risk, right? So when you recommend something, you want to be sure that the measures have to be in place, etc., etc. How do clients see new opportunities like this? Now, in this case, audio streaming, right? How do they see it? Does it even interest them? Do they talk about it? How does it go?
So good question, and I'll answer this. That the way to see this is that to understand how the consumer is moving and how the consumer behavior is evolving, and how the new touch points, and if I were to call audio streaming as a new touch point in this context, how is that creating an intervention or impact in the lives of the consumer. I think if you get that if you get that right, then it is only about understanding as to what is the size of the pie that I can unlock through the streaming conversation. So that's one. However, all these conversations are not, seldom happen in isolation. They happen at an overall level from an integrated view perspective, because the consumer doesn't, distinguish that, I will buy this brand because he came from audio streaming, and I will not buy because he's advertising on Tarak Mehta. I'm just generally.
Yes, sure.
So for example, so if you get the consumer journey right, and if you get the newer interventions, and understand the interplay between how can we leverage this intervention to really make an impactful, media intervention in the life of the consumer, then I think it is a brilliant, and that's a big welcome. Now, if I were to just, so the beauty of audio in the country is that thankfully it cuts across masses, and it cuts across masses as well as classes. So there is, if I really want to use, can I use audio to target the mass cohort of the nation? The answer is yes. There are clients who beautifully done that and gone ahead and won cans and all of that on a feature phone, and Siddharth,
Yes, I remember
that journey, right? To the fact that I can actually go right the top of the pyramid and use programmatic or use technology and use interactive voice technology right now in today's time to create engaging interventions and content for the client, to to really land the brand that no other opportunity can be able to do it. So very interesting use of content and tech that can help us in landing these solutions. So to me it is it is how effectively this medium or this opportunity lands itself into the consumer journey is the make or break.
So I do your clients, I understand, I take your point that, they see it in a larger picture, and this is one of the blocks, and just now, a growing block, but a small one. Does audio streaming come up either in your conversation of your other younger, junior colleagues, whatever? Does it come up at all? I mean, and is it, to ask you the same question which actually Siddharth had answered? Is there how does it compare with radio from the planner's point of buyer's point of view?
Very different. So first is, does it come up in the discussion? Of course, if you're going after the audiences, and thankfully most of these streaming platforms have opened up to programmatic deployment, and therefore there's a way in which we can actually create an integrated reach conversation with the client, and therefore does this come up? Is there that does do we buy impressions, or do we make this as a part of the media plan? The answer is yes. So I think that's there. And it all depends on the need and the type of client that you're going after, right? So that's one part. The second is that a lot of clients have already done experimentation, on the audio format. I don't think it's right to compare it with radio, the classical radio versus this, because that is a medium and that already has a role in the media plan in the way it can structure itself. This can also be a Me Too. This can also play a Me Too role over there, or maybe lifts its entire narrative and play a very specialized, targetable, cohort-related conversation, and we can have those as well. Which I think the radio in general may not be able to do, besides the typical geo, targeting. Like for example, if you want to isolate Bombay out of the entire national plan, then I can go after a radio station and take that. But in this case, if I want to go to a cohort within Bombay, and I want to go to, say for example, hip hop lovers, or I want to go after a far sharper cohort, then I think this entire audio streaming platforms can open up a lot of conversation.
Thanks, Arjun. I want to go back to the the two things I wanted to know. That you were saying that couple of questions. One is, what is the, not specifically to Spotify, but what is the industry estimate of the number of, so assuming that 200 million, there's a 200 million streaming monthly, And if I remember, I may be wrong, but I think that report also said about 100 million out of them, about half of them stream several times a month, if I remember correctly. So actually my question is what is the industry estimate on the number of paid subscribers there are currently? I'm not asking for Spotify. Generally,
I don't think there is any. I don't think there is any great data around that.
Okay.
I think the only way to look at it is based on benchmarks, and my sense is that it is in single-digit percentages for everyone.
I'm sure.
Whether there is a specific number, or because there is also a lot of usage overlap, right? There are people who use multiple audio apps. They may be free on some, they may be paying on some others.
Right.
Like we discussed, like Siddharth mentioned earlier. There is also a lot of experimentation in pricing going on, right? So you have a daily plan, you may pay for it 10 rupees for a day, and then you're not paying after that. So I don't know if the data that is out there really captures the essence of how subscriptions are working across many of these platforms. So I would assume it's largely single-digit numbers across the board.
So what's your feeling? What drives people to pay? What is the big driver? People, even if it's a small, even let's say it's 1%, 3%, 6%, whatever it is. What drives people to pay?
This is a question that comes up very often in a different form. Like in every digital day or CMO meeting I do, this always comes up.
I'm sure.
In a different form, which is that, is there a difference between the people who are on premium and who are on free, right? And the inherent assumption is that the people who are on premium are somehow premium, so to say, right? That they are higher income, older, etc. Whereas the people who are on free are generally younger, low income. That's not true at all, right? At least for our platform, that's not true. We see a pretty homogeneous demographic and income and other sort of factors across free and premium. And this is my personal opinion.
Sorry, Arjun, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I thought you said earlier that this Qatar study said that people, or did I get it wrong? That people.
That was radio versus streaming.
It is radio. I'm sorry. Okay. Right.
So, I know CEOs and CEOs who are on free. I know college kids who pay, right? So I think it's at one level, it is what you value as an experience, right? I think broadly it can be classified in 2 or 3. One, people who value premium experiences overall, they may tend to be higher income, etc. But it could also be people for whom music plays or audio plays a big part in their role. They don't want interruptions, they want flexibility, they want downloads, and so they pay. So we haven't noticed any specific divergence in behavior.
Or in terms of geography or the cities from which they come,
Really.
nothing. Okay. Hey, so Siddharth, maybe you'd like to take this, which is that when I just started asking this and then, we got diverted, but YouTube is so massive and it is so free, right? And a lot of the music is there already. Isn't it difficult to get people to pay? I mean, I'm not talking about your platform, any platform. I'm just saying generally, at a general level, is it difficult to get people to pay when there is YouTube? It's available all the time, and
So let me actually see. This is a very fundamental, and we get this question on a regular basis.
I seem to be asking all the common questions because clearly I'm asking questions that all of you've been asked.
So you need to understand how YouTube is to the music industry.
Okay.
And to the live, and this is not only for India.
All right.
I mean, you could lift this example and take it to the US as well and drop it there.
All right.
Music is used as a build out for their content, discovery for their content.
Right.
In play. We all have flourishing businesses on the back of YouTube being there in play. Each of us today, and why do I say this? You need to understand each of our objectives are very different. Right. It's not a homogeneous objective.
No, absolutely. I get it.
We've got telecom networks, conglomerates over here who have platforms, and they have a certain vision and objective that they're driving for India. And that is reflective of the way they want to take the service to the users.
Right.
In the same way, YouTube has its premium products as well. And the video product that's put out, which is the music product, it obviously has a certain set of audiences that prefer to come to probably a video destination to listen to their music.
Right.
In that sense. And when labels release their music for discovery, chances are consumers may be discovering it on YouTube, but coming to our platforms to consume it day in and day out.
Okay.
So it's symbiotic. Okay, all of our communication are flashed by our label partners, be it T-Series, Sony, Universal, on
No,
the content they put.
I think, Siddharth, I don't think I framed it well. Actually, I'd meant that if so much of the music, I take that point. They are the guys they're like the booster in the beginning. They create interest in the song, but if I want to listen to it 100 times, I'll listen to it on, say, Hangama or somewhere else, but not on YouTube. Because I may be on the move. But actually, I meant, especially, I think perhaps the question should have been for Arjun, because especially in the context of pay, why would you pay when YouTube is always there and it's always free? Isn't that a big
I'll give you my personal opinion, because I don't know if there is a theory or a specific data-driven argument for that. My sort of concept of it is that, when you want a generic experience where you may be watching a music video, but you're also watching a YouTube video of how to repair your car or where to go for your vacation, it checks a lot of boxes. When you want a specialist who does audio really well, who understands audio, who can personalize, who can discover, when you can listen with your screen off, right? When you're going for a run, you don't have to have your screen locked. There are several use cases where audio actually and audio streaming actually comes out on top, right? So I think YouTube is for snacking, like Siddharth mentioned. Audio streaming is for deeper connections and listening and a lot more time spent. So the easiest metric to measure that is you look at the average time spent on YouTube and you look at the average time spent on audio streaming app. That difference itself will tell you the story.
What is the difference? I mean, just I don't know.
On an average on audio, it's 2.5 hours per user per day.
Wow. Okay.
Right? I don't think anything reaches that kind of time spent. No medium reaches that. Right.
That's really amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a bunch of questions here, so I'm just going to toss this. Maybe, I'll ask you the first one. What are the ad formats that work best for brands looking to buy audio inventory?
I think it depends on the type of campaign and the communication objective. I think there's no different answer on this forum. I think it's a very general answer, depending on. So I think like all, what is the communication task over there, and therefore what is it that you need to talk to the consumer about, and then therefore then we will need to work backwards and see how we can render this in each platform, whether it's audio streaming or radio or TV or OTT.
Okay.
Just to add on to that, I think the question, the thought process needs to be changed. It's not about what format works on audio. It's about what's my audience on audio, right? And then based on that audience, you pick whether it's audio, whether it's display, whether it's video, it's a combination. Sure. That is tactical, but you want to go after the audience first.
Okay, there's a Vanita Kohli Khandekar has a question saying, as subscriptions take off, where does it leave advertisers who want to reach or access the audiences who go behind a paywall? I think these are premium, good consumers to reach. I think this context, I think this question has also come up in one of our video conferences. Same thing, that as more and more people, audio, it's small, I understand. Yeah, please go ahead.
There are different ways today, and that's what I think I brought that up as well. I believe there's going to be a lot of innovation that's going to happen on the brand side as well. Okay. Brand, we've seen in other formats as well. Take, for example, TV. TV has had ad-funded programming as a core concept, and it's now a mature format in broadcast. Right. In the same way, Shrikant, even in our space, brands are doing a lot within the space. You can innovate on the creative. Creative does not need to be advertising. It could be content-led. Right. That's the content that consumers take off. So there are various ways for brands to go out after the premium users as well and create great content, which is genuinely good for consumers to consume.
Yeah. And I just want to add on again, sorry, to my previous point. The underlying assumption there is that somehow these premium users are better people to reach. That isn't necessarily true.
Yeah, I know. You mentioned that. That's right. Okay, there's Akansha Srivastava saying the boom or bubble question about, I think, streaming keeps popping up. I think this is more in the context of podcast, but I'm not sure. In the context of audio streaming buzz in India, sorry. She's saying that there is a boom or bubble question which keeps on cropping up in several of the sessions at Audionxt. Since day one, she said, I've been seeing this.
Definitely podcast. Definitely podcast. That boom and bubble. Well, it can't be for music.
Audio streaming, she said. So I'm not sure what she meant.
No, so it is a boom. Let me, and I'll leave Arjun to comment on that. definitely a boom. It's not a bubble. We've got massive amount of content consumption happening.
Okay.
That cannot not necessarily be a bubble.
Okay. There is a technical question which I'm not even sure I fully understand from Vishal, who asks, what should tech teams of audio streaming apps or platforms optimize for? I'm not sure.
I don't know if any of us are techies, but I can maybe react to that with the disclaimer that I'm in no way qualified to really answer this question. But the one thing I'll tell you from my experience at Spotify or at Facebook or Google earlier is that as growth comes from emerging markets, you have to solve for the use cases here. So you have to solve for feature phones, you have to solve for network conditions, you have to solve for, we launched Spotify Lite in India primarily for that reason. So developers need to have a broader view of what the end consumer experience is and then build for that, which is pretty obvious, I guess. So yeah.
Okay. And there is one more from an anonymous attending saying live stream. Just one moment. Okay, let me just read out. Live streaming plus radio still occupies 60% plus of the share of listenership in the global markets. Does the lack of this in India present an opportunity for on-demand services, Ghana's, Mama, etc.? And if it was to be introduced, is it a threat to their model?
I didn't understand. Sorry.
I also did not understand.
They're talking about live streaming versus just regular streaming.
Live streaming plus
there's an opportunity in live, right? I think that's the question.
I think is this a reference to news on radio or the lack of news on radio?
No, it could be to live concerts. See,
Live
all
concerts.
of us, Shrikant, all of us are already bringing that into our containers.
Okay.
Today, live concerts, we've done enough virtual concerts during the COVID time. Prior to that, we've had programs where brands who are doing physical events have reached out to us to bring in digital distribution. People like Amin and his team has bought into those formats, asked us to come and pitch those formats to brands. So there's a lot of work happening. I'm sure Arjun would have a lot of global case studies on how live music concerts are being brought into our containers as well.
Yeah.
Well, nothing to add. I think it's a hot interesting space. Yeah. Lots is happening. I don't see any.
A lot of synergies.
Okay. So we're almost at the end. So I want to ask this question, which the podcast question. Okay. Okay, Arjun, you tell me, what role do podcasts play in Spotify? What do they do for you? Because clearly, in terms of pure numbers, number of times streamed music would be like blow it off, right? What is the role of podcasts?
Average time spent listening to podcasts is higher, right? Okay. So if you have a podcast, you actually have people spending more time than when they're listening to music because it's lean in listening as compared to lean back listening, right? Let me give you a simple illustrative example, right? If I'm driving my car and suddenly somebody jumps in front of me and I'm distracted and listening to music, I don't really care if I miss 15 seconds of that song, right? But if I'm listening to a podcast and I get distracted, I make it a point to go back 30 seconds to catch what it was missed, right? So I think the first one is that, which is overall higher engagement and time spent. Second is there is a lot of hunger for storytelling anyway in our country, right? Music is one part of it. But especially if you look at language, you look at local nuances, you look at the kind of content. I remember when I was a kid, we used to listen to Sholay ka audio cassette, right? So I think that culture is there where storytelling, companionship, education, inspiration, all of that is a need for it in the market. Podcasts fill that in many ways, right? And I think third is traditionally for us as a platform, younger people discovered podcasts because they came to Spotify for music. Older people discovered music because they came to Spotify for podcasts. So it works as a nice cross-pollination of content across different age segments for us. And of course, Siddharth and everybody else will know this well. The music industry is a very, unlike the video industry where you may go to a specific platform because certain content is exclusive, right? You want to watch IPL, you have to go to Hotstar, right? You want to watch Stranger Things, you have to go to Netflix. But Michael Jackson, Kishore Kumar, Lata Mangeshkar is available everywhere, right?
95.
So then how do you differentiate? How do you create silos or buckets where users will come to you for something that is exclusive to you is the last part of it.
Okay. So we are exactly, it's 4:45. I think this attendee has put in a supplementary question, realizing what we were discussing, saying live streaming, that is live radio online versus audio streaming services like Spotify.
I don't know. Do people listen to live radio online? I don't know. Does it happen?
Well, radio, the radio channels brands are really pushing for it.
Okay.
Trying it.
Right.
I don't know. It's
I have
early
no
days.
idea.
Early days, yeah. Okay, I think we are, at the end of our time. It's only 4:46. I want to ask a question. If the three of us were sitting here 3 years from now, okay, how would the conversation be? If you're still discussing monetization, what would we be? How would this conversation be? I mean, you want to take it?
I would be making a case saying why advertising-driven revenue will make much more sense, and to make sure that subscription revenues really don't cut into advertising, and so that all of us can coexist. But it could be other way around. Maybe I don't have a chair on the table there. If subscription takes over everything, so
I know. I mean, please be
I mean, nice
you will always have a chair at the table. So.
But you will tell me, I mean, yeah, what, not on this one. This is subscription full.
I believe 3 years out, Shrikant, we will be in a fairly mature phase of our business. I think both of them would be vibrant, be it the subscription revenue or the advertising container. The fact we've got community today, when Amin goes out and advertises on TV, it's a very simple thing. You still say that 63% comes out of subscription and the remaining 37 comes out of advertising. And that is just because the size of that revenue line has over time increased in play. If I was to take out cricket out of that, we all know where we sit in that sense. Okay. In the same way, when you see us, when this 250 million users is sitting at 500 million 3 years out, you've got a vibrant play out where all of us will have businesses aligned to what kind of objectives that we are following and have revenues that are going to come out from.
Okay, Siddharth. Okay, we're really short, but tell me, if you had to make a prediction 3 years from now, the break in audio between advertising and pay, just take a guess, and I'll hold you to this 3 years later. Remember that.
For Hangama or for
the all streaming platforms, just take a guess. What will it be like advertising?
I think about 30-70, 30% coming out of pay and about 70% coming out of advertising.
I'm noting this down. Okay, Siddharth. All right. Okay, Arjun. Any what would we be talking about?
I think 85-15.
85 advertising, 15. Right.
Also, I'm an ad sales guy, so I have vested interest in.
So I mean, he's also got a vested interest in another way, right? Being at the table. Great. No, that's very, very interesting. This has really been a fun conversation. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, audience, for staying through on the last day. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Thanks.
See ya. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye bye. Bye.